So Senator Catherine Cortez MASTO and Senator Amy Klobuchar had a little run-in with Cory Booker on the Senate floor recently. According to NBC News, what a Senate floor clash between two Democrats says about where the party is headed. The spat between the senators, Catherine Cortez MASTO and Cory Booker this past week, illustrates the larger question before Democrats: resist Trump or bring home goods?
What?
Okay, so I think that Senator Catherine Cortez MASTO thinks that she needs to still represent the state of Nevada, even if that means working with the Republicans on certain key issues for the state of Nevada. And Cory Booker, he represents New Jersey, so he feels that he has to do what he has to do for the state of New Jersey. Now, Cory Booker is in a pretty solidly blue district in a pretty solidly, it could flip, but a pretty solidly blue state, New Jersey. Catherine Cortez MASTO is in a state that is pretty much purple, and it is a challenge for senators and congresspeople who are in those states that can flip, in those districts that can flip, to totally put up this resistance to Trump and the Republicans on everything. And so you're having these clashes within the Democratic Party because there are people who, like, for example, an AOC, who's in a solid blue district. They don't have to worry about if they're going to get reelected. But you have people who are in districts like Senator Catherine Cortez MASTO who have to be concerned with whether the decisions that she make could have an effect up and down ballot when it comes to the races in her state. So the article goes on to read, Senator Catherine Cortez MASTO clashed with Senator Cory Booker this week when he, in a fiery floor speech, tried to block a package of police funding bills as he called for greater resistance to President Donald Trump's policy. Afterward, Booker alluded to his effort in the face of criticism from Cortez MASTO, saying, "What's bothering me right now is we don't see enough fighting in this caucus." In an interview, Cortez MASTO had her own message. She says, "I don't need a lecture from anybody about how to take on and push back and fight against Donald Trump." She took a shot at long speeches as a form of resistance, calling them ineffective as Democrats seek to win back Congress and eventually the White House. So in April, Cory Booker had went on this super long, record-breaking speech. He spoke for 25 hours, warning of the grave and urgent threat of the Trump administration. And he had later on posted a personal record fundraising haul after that speech. But Senator Cortez MASTO thinks that they are just stunts and antics, and it's ineffective in essence. So if we really are going to take on Donald Trump, we need to win. It's not long speeches on the floor, Cortez MASTO said. It's showing the American public that we're there fighting for them. We're passing common sense legislation that they care about. I would say, you know what? We do need common sense. That's what we need from the Democratic Party. We don't need just frivolous resistance, frivolous fighting, frivolous this, frivolous that. The Democrats need to tune in to what the American people need, what the people need in their districts, and they need to bring home the bacon, so to speak. They need to bring home the money. They need to bring home the resources, because that's what they're there for. And if they're not bringing those resources home to their districts, to their states, then they pretty much are ineffective.
I see law firms bending a knee to this president, not caring about the larger principles, that those free speech rights, that you could take on any client. Why are you bending the knee? I see universities that should be bastions of free speech bending at the knee to this president. I see businesses taking late-night talk show hosts off the air because they dare to insult a president. I see people who want mergers suddenly think that they have to pay tribute to this president. And what are the very people here elected to defend the Constitution of the United States saying, oh, well, today, let's look the other way and pass some resources that won't go to Connecticut, that won't go to Illinois, that won't go to New York, that will go to the states he likes? That is complicity with an authoritarian leader who is trashing our Constitution. It's time for Democrats to have a backbone. It's time for us to fight. It's time for us to draw lines. And when it comes to the safety of my state being denied these grants, that's why I'm standing here. Don't question my integrity. Don't question my motives. I'm standing for Jersey. I am standing for my police officers. I'm standing for the Constitution, and I'm standing for what's right. And dear God, if you want to come at me that way, you're going to have to take it up with me.
The theatrics is just comical at this point. First of all, you have these so-called sanctuary states that are encouraging their constituents to get out there in the streets, blocking federal agents, attacking federal agents, and resisting the federal government. All law enforcement should be cooperating with each other. That's just the bottom line. So, Corey, if you're so concerned about the safety of your constituents and so concerned about the safety of Americans in general, you shouldn't be supporting certain policies like open borders, like fighting ICE. The federal government, you're in the federal government. The federal government passes laws and they need to be followed. But yet you have these sanctuary states that do not want to cooperate with federal agents when it comes to enforcing the laws. These illegal immigrants that you are protecting in these states, everybody is not some rosy cheek, innocent, just want a better life type of person. Some of them are actual criminals that come from countries where they actually do things to children, do things to women, and they get away with it. Some of these people actually come from insane asylums and come from prisons from other countries where they told them to hit the road, Jack, and don't you ever come back in the country anymore. You have it where when ICE agents are trying to deport people back to their own home countries, some of these home countries are saying, no, we don't want them back. Would America be okay with dumping their hardened criminals out of their prisons into another country? So you can miss me with all of that. You're looking out for the safety of the citizens of New Jersey. You don't care about the citizens of the country in general with a lot of the policies that the Democrat Party supports. So, you know, the theatrics is just comical at this point.
I agree. Withholding funding for law enforcement anywhere in the country, across the country, is just not acceptable, and it should not be done. And it should not be based on party affiliation, playing favoritism. I absolutely agree. But I also agree that two wrongs don't make a right. And where we are today, these bills passed unanimously out of the Judiciary Committee weeks ago. And my colleague from New Jersey, I have respect for him. He's on the committee. He voted to pass these bills. He had an opportunity at that time to present this amendment. This is the first time we're ever hearing about it. We've been trying to pass these package of bills that passed out of committee unanimously for the last 8 weeks. And now that we came to the floor to try to push and get this done, we are hearing for the first time about this amendment. Now, let me just say, this amendment really is not even applicable to the bill that the profit bill that is part of this. This has nothing to do with grant funding. His bill has everything to do with trying to make sure that grant funding goes to all the states. My bill doesn't even talk about grant funding. There's no funding associated with it. But yet he wants to put it on my piece of legislation. This is why this is ridiculous. This is an attempt to kill all of these bills. I don't know why. I don't know why. Because at the end of the day, all of these bills are about bipartisan support. And if my colleague absolutely has concerns about getting funding to his law enforcement, I'd be willing to work with him. I would be willing to work, and I know my colleagues would, to figure out how we ensure that this administration doesn't play favorites and is fighting for that funding and holding them accountable to get that funding to all of our law enforcement communities across this country. I agree, President Trump's impoundment of funding, it is a serious concern. But tacking on a poison pill language to these bills won't guarantee any additional funding, makes it to New Jersey, Nevada, or any other state. Instead, what it will do, it will keep critical bills from passing in the first place. Now, let me just say that again. These are critical bills. One bill, the Protecting First Responders for Secondary Exposure Act, it requires purchasing devices that prevent secondary exposure to fentanyl and other lethal substances. Reauthorizing Support and Treatment for Officers in Crisis Act of 2025. It provides family support and mental health services to law enforcement personnel. Protect Our Children Reauthorization Act of 2025. It assists federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies in investigating and prosecuting child exploitation. And we are sitting here today saying that is not going to pass, even though it came out of committee unanimously.
This is the problem the Democrats are having, and this is why the fighting is going on, because you have people that think that to satisfy the base, they have to resist everything Trump. Trump could say the sky is blue, they need to resist it and say it's red or purple. So what happens is you have Democrats that feel like they need to just, in essence, be bratty and throw tantrums over everything, even if it's something that's common sense, even if it's something that liberals and conservatives should be able to come together on, even if it's something that liberals and conservatives normally would come together on. It's like, just resist everything, just resist everything, just resist everything. And the problem with that is that hurts the American people. The United States is bigger than just one president. So there are a lot of people in this country. It's not just about one man. So you can't just be in elected office. You're representing all of your constituents, irregardless of what political affiliation they are, irregardless of if they voted for you or not, because you're representing every man, woman, and child that's in that district. So if you're just resisting Trump for everything, then you come out looking foolish, because everything don't need to be resisted. Things that you have valid criticism, valid issues with, of course, there needs to be that checks and balance and that resistance in politics. But just to resist just for the hell of resisting and then not getting anything done for the American people is ridiculous. And also resisting just for the sake of protecting illegal immigrants, I think that's making the Democrats looking foolish too, because you're an American elected official and your main concern should be the American people. So if you're holding up important bills that are so crucial with, like, the things that Catherine Cortez MASTO laid out just a few moments ago, if you're holding that up because you're butthurt that Trump is resistant to helping out states that are resisting federal law enforcement then you're really doing the whole country a disservice, because you are in federal government fighting against the federal government, enforcing laws that are there to protect the sovereignty and there to protect the American citizens.
Even though there was a time to address the concerns that my colleague had.
If my state being denied these grants, that's why I'm standing here. Don't question my integrity. Don't question my motives. I'm standing for Jersey. I am standing for my police officers. I'm standing for the Constitution, and I'm standing for what's right.
Let's bring in MSNBC contributor Mike Barnicle. Mike, what say you?
Well, it's great theater that we just saw. Cory Booker, a good guy, standing up and yelling on the floor of the United States Senate. What I don't understand is he's yelling at two other Democrats. The Democrats have enough problems. They have enough problems in this country defining themselves to people, making sure that people know, no, they are alive. They are interested in your life. They are interested in you solving your problems. But Claire McCaskill, what say you?
Yeah, well, here's what's going on. The Democratic base is starving for a fighter. They're starving for a fight. They want people to fight Donald Trump because everyone is so frustrated and angry and depressed.
Again, they're looking for a fighter, but fight what? What are you fighting for? What are your policies? Because the American people rejected those policies during the last election. You know, so they're looking for a fighter to fight just for the sake of fighting, to resist everything. You know, that's where the Democrats are having a problem right now. It looks like they're just, like they're in a dark room punching at the air.
Everything he's doing and how he's doing it, and the cowardice of the Republicans across the aisle in the Senate who are knowingly doing terrible things, casting votes that I would never dreamt they would have cast when I was serving with them in the Senate. So you got that on one side. On the other side, you have Cory Booker unfairly criticizing two strong Democrats that are doing everything they can in their power to fight Donald Trump. And, you know, Amy's right. There's a way to change a bill. And then there's a way to get in the opening segment of Morning Joe and on the front page of the New York Times. And Cory chose the latter rather than the former. He knew if he did this, it would be a viral moment and he would be associated with Democrats who are willing to fight.
And one of the things I don't understand here is that we have committees for a reason, and we have hearings for a reason. And you can't do one thing on Police Week and not show up and not object and let these bills go through and then say another a few weeks later in a big speech on the floor.
So basically she's saying Cory's grandstanding and looking for viral moments.
So I like to show up at the markups, and I like to make my case. And I will note that Senator Booker objected to my police reauthorization bill, the cops funding, the Clinton cops funding, long before Donald Trump came into office. So this is not just about this. This is a long dispute over this type of funding. Funding that I think is really important right now. Our country's law enforcement professionals do some of the hardest and most important work out there. Every day across America, we ask them to put everything on the line to keep us safe. We ask them to run towards danger and to guide others to safety. And every day across America, they put on their uniforms, their bulletproof vests, their badges, and they get to work.
So knowing that law enforcement has such a dangerous job, it really is surprising to me that a lot of these Democrat elected officials are encouraging people to fight with law enforcement. Law enforcement as far as federal agents, and yes, federal agents who are ICE agents are a part of law enforcement, and their job is tough as well. So if you're for local police officers being protected and you understand they have a difficult job, federal law enforcement agents have as equally a difficult job.
We need to have their backs, and that's what this package of bills does. By the way, bills supported out of the committee from some of the most liberal senators and some of the most conservative senators in this body. We came together. There were bills we would have liked to include that we did not. And if the objection is based on some of this horror show that's going on out of the White House, I agree with that piece of Senator Booker's points. And I have been equally vociferous in taking on this administration. But all of these bills came out of the committee unanimously, and I think they deserve that support on the floor. These bills help fund grants for mental health services for law enforcement. And by the way, if this issue, which I agree with Senator Booker on, about that all these states should be treated the same, well, then I suppose then he will be voting against all of this funding for New Jersey unless this is changed. So we should be watching for that for every single vote instead of just these bills that are in front of us that were supported unanimously out of committee. Grants that help law enforcement combat child sexual exploitation. Grants to help address the recruitment and retention crisis that is plaguing local law enforcement. Senator Cortez MASTO's bill, as she explained, would help support the families of fallen law enforcement officers who were targeted and attacked because of their service as law enforcement. My bill, which has been now objected to, so I'm not going to mention it separately or ask for it to be called up separately. My bill, the Retired Law Enforcement Officers Continuing Service Act, done with Senator Grassley, would make sure that law enforcement agencies can continue to utilize the skills that talented law enforcement retirees have built up over their career of public service. There are many retired law enforcement officers who want an active retirement and are eager and ready to serve their community. This might sound like small ball, but when we are looking at how we're going to build up these police agencies, when we don't have enough police, when they're out there at these scenes getting shot at, we've got to be creative in terms of the ideas. And I believe strongly we're going to see another president in the future. We're going to see out of these next elections a check on some of this. But for now, I want to get these programs started. This bill would allow law enforcement agencies across the country to keep using their expertise to review video footage, to solve carjacking cases, or help cyber and financial crime investigations. This bill will also help train the next generation of law enforcement officers. These and the other police bills passed during Police Week, while those police officers are sitting there in the hearing room, when no one objected, they are bipartisan, common sense.
So the Democrats fighting over how to resist Trump is not about Trump. It's about the direction of their party. You have two different factions of the party that's pulling the party into different directions. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Like, share, and subscribe. Comment below if you're so motivated to do so.